all MSPs sound the same to SMEs. They all sound the same. They all say the same stuff like IT support, proactive support. We give you QBRs. We look after your security. So when everyone sounds the same, like it's very difficult to know who's good and.
Behind every Microsoft partner is a story of growth, a story of ambition, and a story of people pushing themselves, their businesses, and technology further. Every week here on Microsoft Mentors, the podcast, I speak to business, technology, and thought leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem, offering mentorship at scale to the Microsoft partner community. So let's dive into this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. And today I'm excited to be jumping into a conversation with Mit Patel. How you doing, Mit?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Ollie. Yourself, you keeping well?
Yeah, not too bad at all. It's it feels like we're in a different season for podcasting. Literally, we're in season 3 now. And when I recorded season 2, it was the summer. I was sweating. It was too bright in my office. And now we're the other side of the spectrum. We're in the depths of winter and it's really dark.
Yeah, and cold. Dark and cold. Very different.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for joining me, Mitt. I mean, I guess for anyone that's not come across you before, it'd be good just to give them a very quick 30-second just wrap up on who you are and what you're doing, mate, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Mit Patel. I've been in the MSP space for about 25 years. MSPs are typically people who do IT support and IT services. I'm now the CEO of a new company called Assurix, which is a Trustmark and GRC platform MSPs that I'm sure we'll talk about as we go along.
Yeah, definitely. I think anyone listening that wants to learn about, top performers in the MSP and the Microsoft partner ecosystem in terms of what those journeys have looked like and where there's potentially lessons learned. I think it's always a really interesting journey to go on. So I guess for you and technology, where did that begin? Was that a passion pre-work? Was that something that you fell into? How did that all look for yourself, Matt?
I think it kind of started when I was younger. I'm quite old, not too old, but I'm old enough now. And when I was younger, about 15, 16, it was always taking the lid off a computer to try and get it to work. I was around the days when there was a CD called Encarta 95, I think it was, that had all these great graphics and videos on it. And my PC wouldn't work, so I'd be taking the lid off it, trying to fix it. And I ended up kind of liking IT and falling into IT, but not really thinking that I would have a career in IT. And I think I was 20 years old when I founded a company called Netstar Design. And the concept behind Netstar Design was we were doing website design. So we were going around trying to create great websites for companies. This was in 2001, I believe, was the year. So it's very early days. What we were finding as we were going around creating people's websites is people were, and first of all, I wasn't really doing a great job. We're doing a great job designing people's websites. We're doing not a great job in business because we ended up with like, I want to do this, but the scope ended up being like that. And I didn't really know how to communicate to the customer at the time, like it cost more money. So we weren't making much money doing it. But what we were making money was people were asking us to like share their internet connections and to set up their email accounts because it was all very new back then. And we were able to charge, I think we were charging like £60 an hour, which is quite a lot if you think back in 2002. We were going around doing that, and our business kind of changed and evolved 12 months in, and we decided to set up Netstar IT support, which is what we called it back then. And what Netstar IT support did was really outsource the IT for small businesses. So we'd handle all the technology needs for your business.
Yeah. And I guess if we just look at that sort of really early journey, I guess, at 21 to be in a position to, get yourself set up and start a business, I guess just on a purely skills perspective, where did those sort of web development skills come from? Was it all sort of self-taught at that point?
Yeah, I was using, it was all self-taught using, I think I had a book for I think it was Adobe Dreamweaver, the product. The product was definitely called Dreamweaver. I don't know if it was Adobe or not. So I was using
Yeah, yeah,
Photoshop. Yeah, it was Dreamweaver, and a book around coding and trying to kind of work out how to do it. And that ended up in a continuous kind of learning journey. Like, how do we share internet connectivity? Didn't know how to do that. Had to work it out. How do we set up POP3 email for people? Didn't know how to do that. Had to work it out. I mean, at one point we'd managed to land this job rewiring a school to do cabling. It's not something that we'd ever done before, and we bought like
yeah,
a how to do Cat5 cabling book and looked at the 8 different colors, and then had to work out how to use a punch down tool. So it's been like a really interesting journey, just learning all the way along, and not just doing the practicalities, and then learning how to run and grow a business. So I think that's one of the things that I love doing, is learning.
yeah, yeah. So in those early few years, then it sounds like it was very much around where's the customer need, where's the demand, and we'll work out how to deliver it, rather than coming up with this, amazing product service stack and then trying to sell that to customers. It was almost driven by the customers, right?
Oh yeah, it was totally. I had no idea, if I'm honest with you. I had no idea about strategy. I had no idea what to do. I had no idea where to focus my time. We were pretty much winging it back in those early days.
Yeah. And was that because as I say, to do that straight in off the bat at 21 feels like quite a strong move. Was that sort of entrepreneurial career track something that you'd always seen yourself going down, or was it just circumstance?
Um, I think it was a bit of both. I suppose. Look, like, I went to a boarding school in Essex, and one of the things we did in this boarding school in Essex is we would order food from this takeaway place, this Turkish takeaway, and we'd go around the whole boarding house to like 100 different people taking orders, inflating the price a little bit by £1 or £2 or whatever it was, and then getting the delivery and then distributing it everywhere. And I suppose that's where I'd say my entrepreneurial spirit started at, where it was like, oh, I can make money doing this, and actually charging
Yeah,
people a bit more money to do stuff, and I'm actually giving them value, because you couldn't actually order it directly yourself because it was so far away. They'd only do it for a big order. So I think like that's my kind of early impressions of stuff I was doing then, and then it just sort of flowed through. And I think when I was 20, 21 years old, I didn't really have much risk in my head because I was living at home. I had no real expenditure. Um, when I started Netstar, I wasn't really earning any money. I think after month 6, we were paying ourselves £200 a month or something,
yeah.
measly like that. So it wasn't a huge risk for me, and I think um, it's just calculating that risk. And back then, I didn't feel like I had a risk to do it.
I guess that is one of those things, isn't it? Is that when you're younger and or earlier in your career, it may feel more risky because maybe you've not got all of the skill sets or experiences that maybe other people in the market might have. Like say you haven't got kids, you haven't got mortgages,
Yeah.
you are a little bit more flexible to be able to take a punt on yourself. So you've gone through that sort of initial journey from being, I guess, a web development type business model to then flowing into more of IT support for SMB type organisations. That's probably sort of early 2000s. I mean, what does the MSP landscape look like as you're going into that? What did your sort of competitor landscape look like back in the early 2000s there?
Yeah, I think there were quite a few IT companies, but I think the landscape looked like everybody was doing kind of break fix. So something breaks, you ring your IT company, they charge you by hour to fix it. So that was the first thing, where a lot of people were doing break fix, and then we decided to do block hours, which was like, hey, you buy 20 or 40 hours off us a year, and then we service you. And most of our relationships would start with break fix. So we had one company that was a lift company where their server had stopped working, and then they were phoning people around saying, hey, can you fix I think it was an NT server that went down. So we actually were able to go and see that client, fix their problem, and then we put them onto this block hour type contract, which is like they pay us a monthly fee. And I think in this case, it was like 60 hours a year at a discounted hourly rate. So that was like the first stage, like the block hour type stuff. And then it kind of moved into like what we probably see more of true managed services today, which is like an unlimited IT support offering with some element of proactive support included. Through that, we went through stages of people all having kit, so having servers in their offices, to then not having servers in their offices. And I remember, moving to the cloud, like Office 365 was seen as a very scary thing for the industry, because it's like, oh, how are we gonna survive? Because we've got no servers to fix and do stuff on anymore. And
Yeah.
how are our clients gonna actually value what we do if everything's just in the cloud? So been through a lot of different changes in the industry, and now I suppose we're on like the security change, where security's got a lot more important for a lot of businesses, following into now the kind of AI and automation change that's ahead of us.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, you're right there. And I see the same in sort of from my side. And 10 years for me working in the sort of the Microsoft partner ecosystem, we went through that big innovation change of cloud and public cloud and Azure and AWS, etc. And now, the big zeitgeist are security and AI, aren't they? It's just sort of where the technology comes from and goes. I think the longer you spend in the technology space, though, you kind of accept that there is always a new big thing that is going to destroy the industry or destroy the world. But actually, in reality, it doesn't ever happen, or hasn't happened yet, touch wood.
I think there's an element of getting used to that, because like if you met, let's call them waves, right? All the different waves that have happened. Like the first wave you experience is it's pretty scary. You're like, I don't know what's going to happen. The second wave is still scary, but then you're kind of getting used to, oh, actually, this is just another change. We've been through loads of changes before. We've been able to survive them, and you're completely right with what you're saying there.
Yeah, and wherever there's change, there's opportunity, as long as you're able to pivot and understand how it's changing the landscape. And then, so I guess if we sort of work through the mid to end years at Netstar, when did you get it to a point where it was just you and a few guys doing IT support, through to actually being like an actual, what felt to you like a really established business? Maybe when you hit your first million of recurring revenue or made critical hires. When do you think it started turning into, an SMB business to yourself, to actually something that is driving real, 7-figure revenue figures?
I think there were lots of different stages with people along our growth journey. So I think at the stage where we had like 18 to 20 people, we started to feel like, okay, this is probably something a bit realer now that that it is a business. And where we started to grow, growth brought challenges as well as we went along. So we had, I've pretty much broken just about everything in our business along our journey and had to fix it along the way. And what worked when you're a £2 million business isn't going to work when you're a £6 million business or even an £8 million business. So we've had to go for a lot of change through that process. So I suppose coming back to kind of when we felt like actually we've kind of made it, we're a proper business now. Probably we're about 40 people doing around 5 million turnover. And I think when we had our leadership team in place, that's when we started to think that actually this business could go somewhere now, right? Because we were consistently growing, consistently making profit, and there was a lot more scale that could happen in the business through having the right people in the right place.
And how did you deal with that as sort of the leader? Because obviously every milestone, because you set it up when you're 21 and grown it, every milestone you hit as a business is taking you into a position where you haven't got experience running that business. So when you hit, 40 headcount, 5 million, you've never run a business of that size. And then when you hit 8 million and 80 people or whatever, you've never run a business of that. So how did you sort of deal with that maturing of, yourself as a leader within the business as the business matured?
So right at the beginning, I said one of the things I love is learning. And part of going on a growth journey in any business is that I was basically growing my new role, because I couldn't really leave being the managing director of my company, but I could actually keep on growing the company to make my role different at every stage. And what I used to say to the rest of the team was like, look, growth brings us all opportunity. It allows us to be in different roles, in different places, and to have to learn more and to learn more skills. So I think for me, it was just all about learning, being able to learn those different skills along the journey. Some of that was being part of different peer groups that really helped the success of myself personally as well as in the business. And some of it was around just having that thirst of knowledge, being able to consume information and then actually execute on that information within your business.
Yeah, yeah. And as we then, you've been through that growth as a business, you've been through that growth as a leader, as an individual. Was there a particular point where you strategically made a decision of starting to explore what an exit strategy looked like? Was that something that came organically? Did you have to sort of build a structure to drive towards it? How did that sort of transition look like towards ultimately, selling the business?
Yeah, so I never really had any intention to sell the business. So it wasn't something that we intentionally went looking for. It just so happened that we were approached by someone at the time. I think it was like early 2019 when we were approached by someone and said that, and we were just like we weren't interested, all the rest of it, and we ended up going through a process that by I think it was October 2020 that I just got a offer that I couldn't really say no to, or everyone around me said I couldn't say no to. So and myself, I was like, actually, if I do this, I don't have to ever work again. So it was kind of like actually that kind of makes really good sense from a personal point of view that I'm completely de-risking what I'm doing here, and we ended up going on the journey of selling, and I think it was in COVID that we
Yeah.
ended up going through that journey. Part of being in COVID wasn't fun for me either. I like to be around people. Being at home, working from home was a big adjustment of having to deal with a different world. Now it's kind of seen as a normal thing that everybody works from home, but I wasn't used to it.
Yeah.
I've been in an office all my life surrounded around people. So I found it quite different having to work in front of this screen with a camera and maybe talking to your colleagues via Teams or whatever it may be. That wasn't a primary driver for selling, but it was part of the reason.
It's crazy to think, isn't it, what the world looked like pre-COVID and some of the things that happened during that time period that have stayed with us, that have changed how a lot of organisations work, and like you say, the rise of even things like these sort of conversations through industry podcasts. They just didn't exist before. Whereas now it's a medium that you see right across the industry. And I guess when you obviously you'd not intentionally got to a point of necessarily wanting to sell, but the opportunity was there, and it kind of felt like it made sense for you. Were there sort of factors in there that you were conscious of in terms of making sure that the buying business fit and understood what Netstar did and sort of maintained continuity for the team that you built? I guess there was probably lots of conflicting bits that you had to iron out during that process.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately going into the process, it wasn't just about like, hey, give me loads of money and deal's
Yeah.
done. We looked at a lot of factors around, was it the right type of company? Was it the right fit of company? What were their plans for the people in the organization? Because that was really important. We wanted to have continuity for the people in the business and actually more opportunity for them. So the angle was around actually be part of a bigger business, have more opportunity. And I think that, you know, people at Netstar at the time, they were used to change and they were used to having opportunity. So it kind of aligned, and we thought that it makes sense actually that being part of a bigger business, everybody having more opportunity to grow collectively.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you look at where Air IT are now as a business, probably one of the big disruptor MSPs in the UK, aren't they? They've grown really strategically through mergers and acquisitions, and they've bought strategically in different regions. I think they've had quite a clever strategy in terms of being able to drive their own growth through that methodology. So out the other side of it, the day where the emails are turned off, Netstar is off on its own journey. Mit has got no other responsibilities. What was that morning like? I guess a bit crazy.
Yeah, I think not a lot of people talk about what it's like on the other side, right? So I think the biggest thing actually is selling your company, and part of the process of selling your company is going through due diligence. So it's like you have to answer a lot of questions. And that was exhausting, going through, I think, 60 days or 90 days of answering a lot of questions. I think when I don't know if I've ever said this before, but anywhere publicly, but when I sold my company, I actually, when it was signed and done, I went in my garage and cried for 5 minutes. Not because I was sad that I sold my company, because I was happy that I didn't have to do any more due diligence anymore, because it was so hardcore. And the other side, like, it's fun. There's like I explain this to people, there's like a honeymoon period, right? So for the
Yeah.
first 6 months, you're like, oh my God, I can do whatever I want to do. I can wake up and do whatever I want to do. I don't have to check my emails. I don't have to check in with anyone. And then kind of you end up in a scenario, if you haven't found something to do, of having a lot of time on your hands, and you end up wasting a lot of, not wasting, but spending time on stuff that you've never spent time on before. Like, we were going through a house kind of renovation extension project. I could spend like 3 hours choosing a plug socket, and then another 30 minutes like finding the plug socket supplier and the best place to buy it, which would save me 50p. But that could take up 6 hours of my day. Like, what plug socket do I want? What finish do I want? Does it need to have USB-C or USB-A? And I'd ponder over all these insignificant things that should only take like a minute to decide, and it would take loads and loads of time. So you end up filling the time. But coming out of that, at month kind of 12 to 18, it starts to really hit that you don't actually have a purpose anymore. Like with Netstar, I had a
Yeah.
purpose. So you're waking up every morning, you can do whatever you want to do, but you get to the stage where actually, when I was at work, like, I was needed, I was wanted, I did have things to do. And you go through this process where you're thinking, well, what do I do now? And I think that can be a lonely place sometimes with people, because you just don't really know what to do. And I think I'm lucky enough to I've never been unemployed for a period of time, but you can imagine it's probably similar. If it's like you just don't have a job anymore. You don't, and some parts of it, when you run your own business, like, you lose your identity as well when you come out of that business. So that was an interesting time for me to try and work out, like, what do I do? And I spent, not really doing a huge amount for a good couple of years. I was lucky that I had this big house project thing where I could spend, like I said, hours choosing a plug socket to fill up all my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But purpose was the next big problem that I was looking at, and I tried to fulfill that, and I did to a certain extent by investing in smaller companies, being non-exec directors in a few organizations where I was doing sort of 2-3 days a month. I was doing probably 5 days, 6 days a month in total. But it was all those other days where I just wasn't really doing a huge deal.
Yeah, I guess as well, you're just by just nature as well, slightly socially isolated in those scenarios as well, because most people are working during the day, aren't they? So you kind of got that period where you've got to fill the time. I think if you've been someone like yourself that has been so driven and has been so focused on driving the growth of something for such a long time, I can imagine, like say, those decisions on USB A or C in your plug sockets can probably feel a bit a bit.
And I did find a
menial
couple of and I did like find a couple of buddies that I ended up deciding at some point that I was going to go into property investing.
Yeah,
But I wanted to deploy a lot of capital quickly, so I ended up thinking, right, I some reason ended up going around Gloucester and up north, and ended up looking into like blocks of flats, because I thought that would be really exciting to get into that. So I bought a block of flats, and I really liked the part of doing the deal of buying the block of flats. Wasn't really interested in anything past that, like managing
yeah,
it or running it. So I have someone doing that. And then it just became not interesting. I haven't been up. I should go there soon. I haven't been up there in like 2-3 years, just
yeah,
because once you've done that transaction, I was going on kind of property lunches once a week every Thursday, where all these people in the property industry would just get together and go for lunch. That was quite nice. But yeah, the loss of kind of community and purpose was big.
yeah. And I guess built such an expertise in the technology space that I guess probably felt like there was need to be able to deploy that into something with maybe a slightly different purpose and an angle in the market. And I guess that's really where it looks like your new journey with Assurix is, which is still in the same world MSP space that you've always lived within, but with a different angle on it completely. So it'd be really good just to, I guess, where did the seed of idea come from for Assurix? When did that start growing?
Yeah, so I suppose like my founding story is kind of three parts or maybe even four parts, but I'll start with something maybe 10 years ago, yeah, 10 years ago from now, where there was this author called Matthew Pollard who wrote a book called The Introvert's Edge. Never really been an introvert, but I kind of picked up this book and read through this book, and I thought, actually, that makes really good sense. So I decided to go on this guy's website and tick an option for, to have a coaching call with this guy or initial call. Well, we had this initial call and he gave so much value in 45 minutes. I was like, well, we need to get this guy to help us solve our sales process and all the rest of it. 10,000 US dollars, I think it was later. He came on the call and he was like, right, so you're telling me it's really difficult for somebody to find an IT provider and there's no way to an easy way to find it, and you have to go through this process of sitting down with them all and understand blah blah blah. He goes, surely there's like a business in doing that. I was like, look, I'm trying to run my MSP. I've got enough problems on my own end without doing anything
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. So that was probably like the initial 10-year ago seed. And then what happened was one of the companies I was doing non-exec work for was actually a smaller MSP. And I was sitting in one of their monthly board meetings, and they were talking through the new clients they'd brought on, and they were telling me about this particular client where they'd asked for all their information to bring them on board, and they're off their existing MSP, and their existing MSP gave all this info, and they were telling me how the local admin password, which is basically the password you can log on to any of the devices, was welcome123. And I thought to myself then, that's pretty terrible, but I suppose it happens. I
yeah.
wouldn't expect it to happen these days, but it happens. Fast forward kind of, I think it was like 6 or 9 months later, um, they took on another client and it was actually from the same MSP. And they asked for these details again and they were given welcome123 for this completely different client. But now they had a capital W. So they'd obviously been on some sort of cybersecurity training and put the capital in there, welcome123 again. So I was like, oh, this is pretty terrible. A few months later, someone I used to work with, maybe 9, 10 years ago, who used to work for me, set up his own IT company, gave me a ring and said, "Look, mate, I'm stuck at £1 million turnover. Can you give me some advice or help?" And I said, "Sure. Come to my home office. I'll give you 2 hours of my time. You buy me lunch in the pub and 3 pints, and we'll call it quits." So he came to my house. We went through all this stuff, and some of it was around planning, which was most of his issue of understanding, his monthly numbers, etc., etc.
Yeah, yeah.
But one of the things I was looking at was his sales and marketing, and on his website they had this ISO 27001 badge, and I asked him like, "How did you do that?" Because there's like 5 or 6 of you in the company, and Netstar, I think it was 20,000+ to do it, 100+ hours to implement it. I was like, "How did you do that in your business?" And he explained to me that he'd paid £500 to some guy in India to do all the policy documentation, and then he got a company in the UK to accredit it, and he passed. I was like, "What's in the documents?" He was like, "I've got no idea. I
No.
just told the guy I wanted to pass." So then that made me think, like, actually, most people think that the stamp of security is this ISO 27001, but it just goes to show that that doesn't make sense. And then the last thing that happened was this new cyber regulation that was being talked about. So I got, I think, 11 WhatsApp messages that day of people messaging, "Have you heard about this?" Not that I was in the industry, and I was like, "This is interesting. The government kind of want to regulate MSPs in some way, or bring some of them in scope of regulation." And that's where I came up with the idea that actually um, this is where kind of Assurix could potentially work out. And that was driven by a few things. So one of the problems that I see in the finding an IT provider for an SME issue is that all MSPs sound the same to SMEs. They all sound the same. They all say the same stuff like IT
Yeah.
support, proactive support. We give you QBRs. We look after your security. So when everyone sounds the same, like it's very difficult to know who's good and who's not. And the issue is most SMEs and SMBs don't really care about IT that much. And not all of
No.
them wake up in the morning and go, yeah, IT is great like I do because of my Carter 95 days. So they don't care about it and they don't really want to know about it. So you end up in this scenario where they start to choose providers based off the wrong signals. So they look at like, did I build a good relationship with the salesperson? Are they award winning? And we know that to be award winning, you submit an award, you get on a short list, and if you pay £10,000 for a table, you're likely to win the award. Have you ever been
Yeah.
to an award where someone has won the award that wasn't there? I've never been to one. So
No.
it kind of just makes you think that that isn't really a great signal for a buyer. And ultimately, these SMEs end up in what I call a price trap, or the MSPs end up in a price trap, sorry. You get 3 or 4 quotes. 2 of them maybe 1,500 quid a month, one's 2,500 a month, and one's 3,500 a month. Because the SME doesn't really care too much, and because they don't understand the difference between all the providers quoting them, they go for the cheapest quote. They're like,
Yeah.
actually, that sounds like a £1,500 a month problem. And the issue with that is, generally speaking, those people that are charging £1,500 a month, not necessarily maliciously, but in some way or form are cutting corners because they can't spend the right amount of time or effort in that client to deliver an outcome for them. And the issue is that for most SMEs, they understand when they're not getting good service. It's very visible, right? So if you're not getting your phones picked up or your people aren't replying to your emails, you know that service isn't good. But they don't understand when security isn't good because it's invisible. They don't know if your MSP's patched your machines or you have MFA turned on everywhere or you've got the EDR software that's actually working or not. It's completely invisible to them. And all MSPs sound the same to an SME until something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
that's
why
the thing,
we
isn't
are.
it? The stakeholder at the customer is, like you say, they're engaging with the MSP because they don't want the IT problem. They don't want to think about it. They want to outsource the thought of it even being an issue, but they're never going to go into the M365 admin center and look at what's turned on. And that's where the issue is, isn't it? Is that it's being outsourced to, there's, like I say, not maliciously, but the business model of those cheaper MSP business models just don't allow enough resource to be able to necessarily guarantee a level of service in the back end.
Yeah, and you get like all these sorts of workarounds you see, like I don't know, someone can't install something on their machine. I've seen it before where people get admin rights all of a sudden and then they don't get taken away once the problem's been fixed or whatever it may be. You end up with those types of scenarios which are very invisible but are costly. And what we're trying to change, what we will change in the marketplace is that actually what we see is that proof trumps the promise. Most MSPs go in and promise that we're going to be good, we're going to do this, we're going to keep you secure. But actually, those MSPs need proof, and also the SMEs need proof as well that it's happening. And that's what we've basically built. We've built a trust mark that is based on live evidence. So the trust mark's like built on a GRC platform, which has 2 frameworks. One on
Yeah.
cybersecurity, which is aligned to the cyber assessment framework, the government's new framework that will get regulated at some point, and one based on operational maturity, which basically delivers good outcomes for the SMEs. So operational maturity is stuff like, are they delivering their SLAs? Are they actually patching all the machines? Are they giving clear invoicing? And what we've done is we actually integrate in with the tools that an MSP uses, like their PSA, their RMM system, so we can prove this stuff live every day, not just once a year, which most things like ISO, etc., do. And that's where we see, a big up. We've had, I think, just under 100 MSPs now sign up in the space of 2 months and 7 days since we launched.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of good MSPs out there that are doing good things anyway. They've just had no way to prove this before, right, in the marketplace. And we basically are trying to give MSPs a carrot, not the stick, which is the regulation. And the carrot is essentially that they can win more deals because they can prove that they're doing all these things properly. They can charge the right price because you're not getting pushed down as a commodity, having to charge £1,500 a month. We've got insurance partnerships in place that give the MSP a discount of up to 25% on cyber and professional indemnity. You know your business is securer because you're running through this cyber assessment framework. And when the day is right, when you do exit, your business will be worth more money because you actually are following two frameworks that mean you're more mature. And we can prove that over a period of time from when you join. So if you're buying someone and you know they've been doing something correctly for 2 years and you don't have to do due diligence on some big chunks of work anymore, then you know that actually it's going to be worth more, if you'll pay more for it. So we're trying to give the MSPs the carrot to actually do the right things if they're not doing at the moment. And if they're already doing the right things, we're just giving them a way to prove it to give them a great benefit.
Yeah. So if you've got an MSP right now and they're one of those businesses that is actually doing the right thing, as it stands, how would they be measuring that internally without Assurix, or is it really difficult for them to pull those different moving parts together?
It is slightly difficult because MSPs use lots of different tools. So part of what we're actually doing is we're integrating into a lot of the security tools that they use to aggregate and pull this data together. The other thing is what we're providing is essentially a full GRC platform to enable them to work through all the things that they need to with their team to make sure they're doing the right things. For example, in an MSP, you may be doing backups for your clients, but generally there may not be one person that's responsible for those backups in your MSP. The second thing is there may not be any visibility at board level that those backups are happening or not. So if you put two of those things together, your likely outcome is that clients' backups aren't getting done somewhere. And the only way as an SME you find that out is when you need to restore something and the MSP is oh, your backups aren't working, which isn't great for anybody.
Yeah. And you mentioned, obviously, when you were at Netstar, it felt like the ISO framework, there was a barrier to entry of that in terms of time commitment and cost. What, if you're an MSP that wanted to go through the journey of getting the Assurix Trust Mark, what would that look like from, coming on and starting with your platform to a point of getting to a point where they've been through all of your checks and balances to get the Trust Mark? What's the typical journey for an MSP with you guys?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the maturity of the MSP. So one big difference to what we give MSPs is because we've been in the MSP industry for we've got combined experience of 60 years in our company right now. They'll probably keep on going up once we employ more people. But we've basically made our framework and all the things that we ask for in a very prescriptive way for an MSP, so they know what to do. And then we basically give them the how to do as well. So if you're not sure how to comply with a particular section, we're going to tell you how to do that and how to implement that in your MSP. So that's part of the big difference of what we're doing is we're educating MSPs on what to do and how to do it along the journey. In terms of time span, we're looking at an average of between 60 to 90 days for an average MSP. Obviously, if your MSP isn't doing all the things they need to do, it could take longer. For example, Office Secure Score. If your Office Secure Score is like 20, there's probably 15, 20, 30 things you need to implement in your business to get it right. That may take technical time for you to do, like putting on stuff like conditional access, and we're geeking out on terminology here, but all that kind of stuff needs to be in place for you to get the trust mark. And part of once you have done all of that and been assessed is when you get the trust mark, where obviously we've got live data coming in from your PSA, for your SLA stuff, for your RMM, and the security tools that you use to know that you're doing what you need to do in the right way. And if you become non-compliant in something, we'll send you an alert and we'll give you 30 days to fix it. If you don't fix it within 30 days, we suspend your trust mark.
Okay, yeah. So it's, and that from from the client side, in terms of going through that sales process with an MSP that has got the Assurix trust mark, that is something that the MSP can really leverage, isn't it? It's not we got the rubber stamp on the 1st of January and we're still talking about it on the 30th of December. It's real time, and if something drops off that, then they haven't got the ability to use that trust mark. So it keeps the MSPs compliant all the time, rather than just doing it at these set audit times, which has always been the case, hasn't it, with these sort of frameworks?
Yeah, I think when it's like a point in time audit, I think the issue is that anything can happen in those 364 days where you're you're not having to be audited, and we've seen it before. Where even in my own MSP, I remember with ISO we had to clear all the paperwork off our desk, like any sensitive information or any paperwork, so we wouldn't know what it is. Like the minute the auditor goes out the door, everyone's a bit more laxed about the paper they have on their desk. When the
Yeah,
auditor's in, everyone's chucking everything in their drawer, right? And you see it at pretty much every company. That there are these little quirks that you have on audit day that you don't
yeah,
have on non-audit day.
100%. And I guess for you, because you started a business when you were 21 in the early 2000s, and you started a business now in 2025. I would imagine the routes to market and how you're sort of building the brand awareness of the business is very different. I would imagine Netstar would have been old school, yellow pages, referral type business.
Yeah.
Whereas now we live in the world of video and social media and social proofing. So what's that journey been like, sort of launching a business in the new world?
Yeah, I think part of what we're doing is in terms of our mission, it's pretty strong. We're trying to actually help the MSP community. The first thing we're trying to do is raise the bar in our industry, because if you take a scale of 0 to 100 in terms of what MSP security and maturity looks like, it's probably 25 of the average. We're trying to get that to 80 plus across the whole of the UK. We're built to help good MSPs win. So we're all about helping the ones that are doing the right thing win. And we're trying to make it easier for SMEs to find this trusted provider. But ultimately, we're trying to strengthen the UK supply chain. So coming back to kind of the branding and what we did in terms of launching is, because that's our mission and what we want to do, it's quite easy to get behind, because ultimately everyone wants, if you're a good MSP, you want to win. You get
Yeah,
the fact that it makes sense to raise the bar in our industry, and you get the fact that ultimately, if we can strengthen the supply chain in the UK, great. So it's been an interesting journey. We kind of started with proof of concept of understanding, like, would it work, would it not? If I'm honest, like before deciding, yes, I'm going to go all in this, it was mainly around, did I think this was going to be really successful? Could it be really successful? Because I didn't want to be part of something that wouldn't work. It would be too much of a failure for me to deal with, right? It'd be like, well, actually,
yeah,
I've started this thing and it's not worked out. That's my kind of legacy. A bit like Lewis Hamilton, not really working out too well for him at the moment in
yeah,
F1,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I didn't want that to happen for me. So I thought, like, really intentionally, and I wanted to get as many data points as possible to know, yes, I'm going to go into this. It was more for my own reputation that I did that than the monetary, putting in the money and the time. It was more, I didn't want my reputation to be impacted. So I spent a lot of time, probably 90 days, just researching, talking to various people, working out how we could go to market. And ultimately, what we ended up doing was like, we wanted to have a celebration of, like, yes, we're going to do this, and we're going to make a big change in our industry. So we decided to have a launch party. So that launch party was sooner than I wanted it to be, because there's loads of industry events going on. And when we sat
yeah,
down, we're like, actually, the only date we could do it is October the 2nd. And I was like, well, can't we do it in November or December? Because that gives us a bit more time. And I was like, no, well, November, you can't really do it because everybody's kind of winding down and in loads of events already. October,
yeah,
you can't do it mid or the end because there's too many events going on. And December, there's no point because everyone's, on their Christmas parties and they don't really care about anything. So we
Yeah.
were presented this date, I think like 40 or 50 days out. And we're like, right, okay,
Wow.
looks like we're going to do it on then. So we had quite a big launch party. We had just under 100 people come to it, a lot of people from the industry. And then I just spoke to everybody about like what we're doing, why we're doing it. And we were lucky enough at that time we had, I think, just under 20 people that had basically said that they would join the wait list, which is what we had set up. And then it kind of snowballed from there, if I'm honest. We just had this launch. We put some stuff on social media. We decided that we would send out, if someone joined the wait list, like an Assurix box that had a water bottle in it, a branded pen, some other bits and pieces in there. And then that started to go a bit viral on LinkedIn. So every time someone got a box, they were posting it on LinkedIn saying that they're joining Assurix, why they're joining Assurix. And we're showing this picture of this box, and we've probably got there's like 40, 50 pictures of people with these boxes. And then people started to outdo themselves and started to do videos of it. So we ended up people doing videos of opening the box and showing the box. But ultimately, it was all behind, the core of us wanting to raise the bar in our industry and help good MSPs win. That's what we're trying to do. And I think it's easy to get behind. And it kind of, what we're doing to an MSP completely makes sense, in terms of the things that the challenges they're facing. And likewise for SMEs, we've spoken to lots of SMEs where they've made the wrong choice with the MSP and they don't even know what their MSP is actually doing from security, apart from a really confusing bill. So we're trying to make it easier for them to partner with good MSPs.
Yeah, yeah, and that's how I came across yourself and Assurix was it was the boxes. It was probably around the launch, the time of the launch event, sort of mid to end of October. I just kept seeing all these people that I know in the MSP industry, and I was like, what are all these boxes and
Yeah.
who are Assurix and it works. And I think that there is a real good conduit when you can get something where there's like a physical marketing element, like the physical box, that works in two ways. It, reminds the actual person that's got the box on a daily basis who Assurix are and that piece. But then when they start to then push that out into their networks and use it as a social post, it can be one of those things that really catches fire.
Yeah, and I think that like at the moment, like we've got I think 3 MSPs that are going, 70% through the Trustmark journey. We've got 10 MSPs that are starting this month. Like people haven't actually got the Trustmark yet to get all the benefits from it. But what we're starting to see, we've had 4 people tell us different stories that when they're going into prospects and talking about, hey, you should use my IT company, they're actually talking about Assurix in that pitch
Oh,
and
really?
saying we're going on this Trustmark journey. And the reason we're doing it is we want to prove to our clients that we're doing the things that we need to, should be doing, and we want to prove it to you as well as us internally and to all of our peers. And they're winning deals. Like we had someone last week who said they went to, I think it was a customer that has 50 users. They were up against 3 other people. They were going through a tender process, like 3 stages of meetings.
Yeah.
After the third stage, they cancelled the other 2 stages with the other providers because they were like, actually, this makes sense. So we're actually going to do some type of video on that. Hopefully, go see that customer as well. The reason they chose this MSP was because they were going on the Trustmark journey, let alone having the Trustmark yet. So I think it's going to make a big difference and impact for MSPs.
Yeah, like I say, it helps all parts of the chain. It helps the MSP. It makes it gives them a competitive advantage when, like you say, they're operating in quite a commoditized space. And then you flush that down to the customer, and the customer is getting reassurances that they're dealing with an MSP that isn't going to give them welcome 123 as their password for
Correct.
their local admin, right? That's the vision. And I guess for you, obviously, it sounds like, just to sort of wrap it up, you were quite diligent in terms of your thought process of, if you were going to do this, you wanted to do it, you wanted to do it right. If you look in, 5 years' time, what does Assurix look like? What does that journey look like over from 0, year 1 through to year 5, do you think?
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing is that we've actually made a real difference in the industry, and that changed that average score of what the bar is. And anyone that's part of the Assurix community, like we're really going to spend a lot of intentional time and effort helping them win. So if you're part of the Trustmark journey, if you have the Trustmark, we're going to be spending time helping you guys win. And I think ultimately success for us looks like we've got a mass of MSPs on board, probably between 1,000 and 1,500 MSPs. There's 13,000 in the UK, but let's say 1,500 MSPs on board, and people are making good decisions, like SMEs are making good decisions, choosing the right partners, and we're connecting those SMEs to those good MSPs. And that's ultimately what we're looking to do. Because if you think about it this way, the average MSP has about 80 clients. Out of those 80 clients, let's say there's 15 employees. Let's say there's 10 employees per 80 clients. There's probably more than that. Let's say 20.
Yeah.
That's 1,600 lives that an MSP is impacting. If something happens to that MSP, for whatever reason, they get breached or something wrong happens. I'm not saying that people won't ever get breached ever, but it could happen. There are 1,600 potential families that are being impacted by that, just by that MSP not doing what they should be doing, or maybe not having visibility on what they should be doing, right? So we're trying to change that problem and to make sure that those lives don't get impacted, because MSPs they hold the keys to the kingdom, and there's a lot of responsibility behind that for them, and I think they know that, and I think we know that, and we want to help them with that responsibility by doing the right things.
Yeah. Well, and what you also might see is a butterfly effect, in that, Assurix might work directly with 1,000, 1,500, but there might be another 1,000, 1,500 that, for whatever reason, might not engage with Assurix. But if they're coming up against Trustmark, Assurix, MSPs as competitors, they're going to have to do work themselves to at least uplift their own, standard. So I think by virtue of what you guys are doing, you're going to uplift the standards directly with the businesses that you're working with. But because the rest of the market is going to have to compete with those businesses, hopefully the whole industry should see an uplift. And that's hopefully the bigger picture stuff, isn't it, for you?
Yeah. And I think if you ask any MSP, I was in a room of, I think, 100 of them the other day, tell us about a time that you've taken on a new client from another MSP. What was it like? Was it a good experience, bad experience? What was wrong? Pretty much most of them would have had something in the last 12 months where they've taken on a new client from someone else, and they're like, these guys shouldn't have passed Cyber Essentials Plus. These guys shouldn't have done this. These guys have had this issue. So we're just trying to stop that happening going forward, and hopefully, not hopefully, it will happen. Just give me some time.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the time. It's been really interesting to hear a bit more about your journey. Obviously, starting out that entrepreneurial journey at 21, sort of feeling your way into the industry, and then obviously what you guys are now doing at Assurix. From my side, I'll be continuing to champion what you're doing in the space. Obviously, anyone that is listening and is interested in finding out a bit more about Mit or a bit more about Assurix, we'll make sure that everything's linked through so that you can get in touch. But yeah, in the meantime, thanks very much for your time, Mit, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Great. Thanks for having me, Ollie. Speak to you soon.
Cheers, mate. Where's that? Bosh. That was really good. Thanks, mate. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Whether you listen to us on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcast, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. Both myself, Ollie Ridley, on LinkedIn, our guests, and also the podcast. The more people that we know are listening, the more time and investment we can make into the podcast and bring more conversations with our Microsoft mentors and leaders from across the Microsoft Partner ecosystem to our community. In the meantime, stay tuned and keep an eye out for next week's episode.